After waking up from my sleep, induced by the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, I realised that I haven't done a rundown video for a very long time, and I thought, what better way to jump back on my rundown videos than by ranking all the F1 teams and their performances from the 2022 season. And we're just going through all the teams in Constructors' Championship order, so Red Bull first, Williams last, basically. So we're gonna run through each team. We're gonna give them a grade, A to F. We're just gonna get straight to it, basically. So first off is obviously Red Bull. Now, I mean, they've been dominant. Let's just be completely frank, right? 17 wins out of a 22 race season. 15 of those from Max Verstappen. That is incredible. Also a note on Perez as well. He's been much more competitive this season. He was in the first half of the season, I suppose we can say. The car obviously suited him. It had a slight aerodynamic balance further towards a bit more understeer than oversteer. Perez prefers an understeer, a more understeer kind of concept and aero balance, whereas Max Verstappen prefers oversteer. And during the first half of the season, because it was a more understeery concept and the aero balance was, it didn't have as much oversteer as Max Verstappen wanted, it meant that Perez was able to be closer to Max in terms of performance. Obviously, Red Bull then developed the car more towards Max's liking, and then Perez was at his usual 1 second roughly gap to Verstappen. So overall then, we are going to grade Red Bull an A. And realistically, there's no other rating that we could give them. If there was an S tier, I would. Red Bull have done a top job, and you can't argue with that. I'm a Mercedes fan, I'm a Lewis fan, but even I have to admit that Red Bull got it right this year. Mercedes didn't. Ferrari don't know how to do strategy. Red Bull do. So you can't argue with that. And fair play Red Bull. Moving on to Ferrari then. Just going from the start of the season, they were absolutely rapid out the box. That car, even though it was porpoising as well, just worked. They had absolutely blistering one lap pace as well. I mean, if you look at throughout the season, 12 out of 22 pole positions and 9 from Charles as well. Realistically, Red Bull's race pace is just too quick, and the concept of the Ferrari is too aggressive on its front tyres. They just need to get on top of their strategy. They just need some fine tuning of the car performance. The downforce is there, the speed is there, the driver talent is definitely there, facilities are there, just strategy that is still lacking. But overall, we're gonna grade Ferrari a C for this year, and it's simply because they did good. I don't think I can grade them A because their strategy was terrible and they didn't get on top of their reliability. So, on to Mercedes now. Well, just going through from the start of the season, obviously they had the 0 side pods that they brought to the second test, not the first test at Barcelona, the second test at Bahrain. And from the get-go, they knew they had issues with bouncing and porpoising. So the first 8 races of the season, Hamilton was running experimental setups. They were putting extra heavier things on the car, sensors, etc. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a green light on the bottom of Hamilton's car at Australia, and that was from a sensor. And he was running experimental setups throughout the first, I don't know how many races of the season, but it must have been about a third of the races this year. And that obviously meant that compared to Russell, he was nowhere. I mean, if you think about Saudi Arabia, was it? Where he didn't even get out of Q1 or something. So it was really just a year of learning because they made such a crucial mistake. But they got amazing pace out of the boat this year. It was super draggy on the straights. It was bouncing through the corners and porpoising through the corners, which meant that it was losing a lot of downforce. But they still secured a 1-2 at Brazil, which is a fantastic result.
It's a 1-2 for Mercedes!
And I just feel like that's foreshadowing for next year. Now, in terms of rating on the tier list, I am going to have to put Mercedes as either an E or an F. I think I'm gonna put them in E. I know that they had lots of podiums this year, but I just, compared to the dominance that they've had, I feel like they're an E based on the team performance, which is the main thing. Mercedes, unfortunately, are an E this year, but I have no doubt they will be back up to A next year, no doubt. Now, moving on to Alpine, 4th in the Constructors' Championship. They did a great job overall. You can't really complain with how well they did. They used the regulation changes to good effect. They jumped ahead of McLaren. Reliability, though, was their key weakness. Alonso, I don't know how many retirements he had, but he was really unfortunate. My biggest worry for them is, because of the engine freeze, is that unreliability, kind of the effect of that going to run through the next few years? I would hope not. I would hope that there's still some scope to develop engines for reliability purposes. But it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds over the next few years. Just touching on the drivers, Alonso's obviously going to Aston Martin next year. I mean, if you look at the end of the season, he was just so done with Alpine. He was slagging off Ocon, he was slagging off the team. He was just done. Another bridge burnt. That's just Alonso things. He's been replaced by
Pierre Gasly!
Now, obviously, Gasly and Ocon have some sort of, childhood rivalry thing that's, still exists. So if they don't grow up, then that could potentially lead to fireworks within the team. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, Alpine's solid job. I'm going to put them as a B for this year. I think they've done a great job, and they've moved ahead in the Constructors' Championship. So still that upward trend, which, is the ultimate goal for Formula 1 teams, is to improve. And they have done that, and they've jumped a team. That's another 11 million that they're getting, so that's huge. So well done, Alpine. Going on to McLaren, they obviously started off with a really, really tough time in Bahrain. They had issues with brake cooling for whatever reason. The way that the flow structure around the car was working, there just wasn't any air going to the brakes. But they quickly solved that for the next couple races, and that was fair enough. And then they were back, just where they had been the entire time. I think, unfortunately, Daniel Ricciardo, he struggled still all season, and there's just a fundamental incompatibility between him and what the McLaren does. But he's going to Red Bull next year as a third driver. He's chilling. He's not going to be too worried about it anymore. Touching on Lando, though, once again, Mr. Consistent. Got a podium in Imola. Don't know how he did that, but fair play. He finished in the points 18 times out of 22 races this season. Only one DNF, so, fantastic. But as a whole for the team, definitely hoping for more. They were only P5 in the constructors, so they have actually gone back one place. That's not where they want to be. So for McLaren, I'm going to rate them as a C, just, mid, not really done much this season. Moving on to Alfa Romeo then. They were rapid at the start, right? They were something like the fourth quickest car, but they've just been so unreliable. I think they were the most unreliable of all the teams. Potentially, they might be able to get on top of their issues for next year, but again, it comes to that engine freeze effect that I've discussed with Alpine. Are they going to be able to fix that issue with the engine? We're not sure. We'll have to wait and see. Bottas, he's been that kind of leader, mentor role with Guanyu Zhou.
Joe to attack him into turn 10. Latifi's breaking out of there.
And it's been good to see. He's been much more relaxed, I feel. But, impressive for Guanyu is the fact that he was quicker at the end of the season, which speaks volumes about his potential. And it'll be interesting for next year's contracts as well. But overall, I'm going to have to rank Alfa Romeo as C. I just feel like looking at their performance, they've been rapid, but then they've had unreliability, so it kind of meets in the middle. And I just think, they've just been a bit mid this year overall. Moving on to Aston Martin now. They've maintained P7 in the Constructors' Championship. I don't think we're really going to see big progress until their new factory opens, which is at the end of 2023. And then that will take a couple of years to have an effect on the car. So I don't realistically see them having any major improvements until 2025 because of those structural changes within the team. However, they do have important technical staff from Mercedes and Red Bull now, so it will be interesting to see their effect on the car's performance until that factory is open. Looking at the two drivers now, Seb, 2 top 6s, and then Stroll, he's been absent all year. Normally in the wet he's just appears out of nowhere. But even this year I think the car's just struggled with firing up its tyres, and I think that's had a major effect on his ability to just do anything with the car. But overall, just going to put a D for Aston Martin. They've not been amazing, but they've just maintained the same as last year basically. Moving on to Alfa Tauri now. I mean, there's not really much to say. They've been nowhere all season. Yuki has been much closer to if not faster than him, but he still needs to work on his racecraft. If I think I remember Silverstone when he hit Gasly, it's like, come on bro, what are you doing? Just silliness basically. He just needs to think a bit more. But as a team, definitely they would be left hoping for more. So for AlphaTauri, I am going to be ranking them an F, because they've just had the worst season I've ever seen them have. Just terrible season. Next, moving on to Haas now. They obviously had that promising start. They were doing well with with Magnussen. But they changed concept mid-season to that kind of white Ferrari that everyone was talking about. I always get that Frank Ocean song in my head every time I think about it. As soon as they changed concept, they just kind of fell back a bit, and that was a bit disappointing to see. Magnussen's performing well. He got that pole position, obviously. In Brazil, we had that kind of Haas sandwich with Magnussen P1, Mick P20. But yeah, just a solid job. I'm still ranking them as a D, because they've not really done anything. But I'm not ranking them an F, because they've still moved up to P9 in the Constructors' Championship, which is obviously good. So fair play to them. Moving on to Williams then, finally. Nowhere, as always. They seem to just have these severe structural issues that they just can't solve with the team. But obviously Latifi is out, Sargent is in, and Albon's been performing well. He scored 3 points finishes this year. De Vries obviously got that points finish in his first race at Monza with the team. But just like AlphaTauri, just hoping for more. But it's just, they're always hoping for more, and it's just a shame, really, because I feel they deserve better, with the heritage of that team. I feel like they, at least deserve to be where McLaren is as well. So I'm going to be ranking a Williams an F, because they've just had a rubbish season this year. So that is it. That's my rundown of each team's season this year. It's been a good season. Definitely better racing, but at the same time, let's not fool ourselves that the championship fight has been closer, because Red Bull have kind of run away with it. There's been 25% more overtaking. Nobody won a race outside of those top 3 teams still. So hopefully the field spread will be much smaller next year. But yeah, that's been the video. So thank you very much for watching. In the meantime, why don't you go check out the last video that I put out, which was creating my dream F1 team. Interesting concept. I think you guys will find it entertaining to run through that idea. Let me know your thoughts as well in that video in the comments. Go check out that video, and I'll see you there.